Hello everyone, I welcome to yet another video lesson on the study of gear. In our previous video, we have learned 10 fundamental concepts of geomorphology. The first two concepts we have learned, so the same physical processes and laws that operate today operated throughout geologic time, although not necessarily always with the same intensity. And the second concept was geologic structure is a dominant control factor in the evolution of landforms and is reflected in them. Okay, so if there was any doubt, you can reach us through the comment section down below, and let's move into our today's lesson, the rest of the fundamental concepts of geomorphology.
Concept 3. To a large degree, the Earth's surface possesses relief because the geomorphic processes operate at differential rates. So the main reason why gradational agents acts on the Earth's surface differentially is the rock structure or the lithology of the rock. Okay, so lithology and structure are major factors contributing to differential wasting of Earth's surface. They are by no means the only reason why geomorphic processes within narrow limits may operate at variable rates. The local intensity of particular processes may change due to the following factors. What are the factors? Moisture, altitude, exposure, even the vegetation cover around the rock surface controls the diastrophism or the changes happening on the rock surface. Okay, moving on to concept 4, that is geomorphic processes leave their distinct imprint upon the landform, and each geomorphic process develop its own characteristics assemblage of landforms. The term process applies to many physical and chemical processes acting on the surface of the earth and responsible for different changes happening on the earth's surface. Some processes are such as diastrophism. The word diastrophism we have already discussed in our previous video, that it refers to the changes or the distortion. In this case, we can consider it as the disintegration of rock mass, be it weathering or mass wasting, or there are many atmospheric phenomena which are changing the pattern of Earth's surface or rock structure. These are diastrophism. Volcanism originate from forces within the earth crust and have been designed as endogenetic forces. Okay, whereas others such as weathering, mass wasting I was talking about, these forces are acting on the earth's surface. That means these processes are exogenetic forces. Clear? The concept of geomorphic processes operating upon the earth crust is not a new one. Even ancient recognized it to some degree, but the idea that the individual process leave their distinctive stamp upon the earth's surface is rather recent. Just as species of plants and animals have their diagnostic characteristics, so landforms have their individual distinctive characteristics also. Thus, for an example, floodplain, alluvial fans, deltas are the product of streams. Okay, and the moraines or drumlins, these are of glacial origin. So this is how we can group different landforms according their genesis. Clear? So moving on to concept 5, which refers that as the different erosional agents act upon the earth's surface, there is produced an orderly sequence of landforms. Now this we have already learned from W.M. Davis as well, he who stressed most on the geomorphic cycle and its concomitant stages such as youth stage, mature stage and old stage, culminating in a topographic surface of low relief to which David assigned the name of peneplain. So concept 5 is differential erosional agents act upon Earth's surface, there is a produced orderly sequence of landforms. Like if we talk about fluvial geomorphology, then there are three concomitant stages. Youth stage, where we are getting erosional landforms. Mature stage, where both the erosional and depositional landforms are there. And old stage, where the river or where the stream is unable to erode, and it has much carrying materials, so it deposit all the materials it try to deposit along the river beds. So many depositional landforms are forming. So these are the three distinctive stages, sequences you can tell. Next, concept 6, complexity of geomorphic evolution is more common than simplicity. Now this we need to understand that it is probably a fundamental human trait to prefer a simple explanation to more involved one. But a simple explanation is probably rarely the correct one. Many of the great controversies in the science have arisen from this preference for a simple explanation. The serious student of landforms does not progress far in his study of them before he comes to realize that the little of the Earth's topography can be explained as the result of the operation of a single geomorphic process or a single geomorphic cycle of development. Usually, most of the topographic details have been produced during the current cycle of erosion, but there may exist within an area remnants of features produced during prior cycle. And although there are many individual landforms which can be said to be the product of some single geomorphic process, it is a rare thing to find landscapes assemblage which can be attributed solely to one geomorphic process, even though commonly we are able to recognize the dominance of one. So it may facilitate our interpretation of landscape to group them, as said by Horbuch 1952, in 5 major categories. So first one is simplex, simple, compound, monocyclic, multicyclic, and resurrected landscape. Now what is simple landscape? Simple landscapes are those which are the product of single dominant geomorphic process. Compound landscapes where one or more, two or more existing geomorphic processes are there, and which are the major factors of developing existing topography. Okay, next comes what is monocyclic. Monocyclic landscapes are those that bear the imprint of only one cycle of erosion. Multicyclic landscapes have been produced during more than one cycle of cycles and are in general restricted to such newly created land surfaces. A recently uplifted portion of the ocean floor, the surface of a volcanic cone, lava plain, plateau, or areas buried beneath a cover of Pleistocene glacial deposits. Polyclimatic landscapes. Now what are polyclimatic landscape? To the idea of complex evaluation of landforms should be added the concept of polyclimatic landscapes. It has become evident in recent years that many landscapes have evolved under more than one set of climatic conditions, with accompanying variation in the dominant geomorphic processes. Many of these varying climatic conditions were associated with the fluctuating climates of Pleistocene time. We all know Pleistocene was the last ice age Earth surface were experienced. But in some areas, certain aspects of topography reflect climatic conditions that existed in tertiary time. And what is resurrected? Resurrected landscapes are those which are found during the ancient time of geologic time, then buried beneath a cover mass of igneous or sedimentary and still later exposed through removal of the cover. Topographic features now being exhumed may date back as far as the Precambrian, or they may be as recent as Pleistocene. So throughout the areas covered by Pleistocene deposits, there are hundreds of streams in the process of resurrected periglacial topography. Most resurrected features are of local extent and constitute a small portion of our present day landscape, but they may be striking features. For example, along one stretch of the Wabas River in northern Indiana, where it flows across a buried periglacial topography. Its valley is less than 1/2 mile wide, where the stream cuts into the bedrock of buried ridge. But the valley suddenly widens to 3 miles, where it is being cut in the more readily erosible glacial materials, filling a periglacial valley. So moving on to concept 7. Little of the earth's topography is older than tertiary, and most of it no older than Pleistocene. I repeat, little of the earth's topography is older than tertiary, but most of it no older than Pleistocene. Okay, so it is a common concept that refers erosional surfaces dating back to the Cretaceous or even as far as back to Precambrian. We have gradually come to a realization that topographic features are so ancient are rare, and if they do exist are more likely resurrected forms than those which have been exposed to degradation through vast period of geological time. Most the details of our present topography probably do not date back of the Pleistocene. That many geologic structures are very old. It has been previously stated that geological structures in general much older than topographical features developed upon them. The only notable exceptions are to be found in the areas of late Pleistocene and recent diastrophism. The Himalayas were probably the first folded in the Cretaceous and latter in the Eocene and Miocene, but their present elevation was not attained until the Pliocene. Most of the topographic details is Pleistocene or latter in age. The structural features which characterize the Rocky Mountains were produced largely by the ancient, which probably culminated at the close of the Cretaceous, but little of the topography in this area dates back of the Pleistocene, and the present canyons and details of reliefs are of Pleistocene or recent ages. Okay, so concept 8 stands for proper interpretation of present day landscape is impossible without full appreciation of manifold influences of the geologic and climatic changes during Pleistocene. So I repeat, proper interpretation of present day landscapes is impossible without a full appreciation of the manifold influences of the geologic and climatic changes during Pleistocene. So correlatively, realization of the geologic recency of most of the world's topography is the recognition that the geologic and climatic changes during the Pleistocene have had far-reaching effects upon present-day topography. Concept 9. An appreciation of world climate is necessary to a proper understanding of varying importance of different geomorphic process. The climatic factors, particularly those of temperature, precipitation, should influence the operation of geomorphic processes seems self-evident. Yet there have been surprisingly few detailed studies made which attempted to show to just what degree climatic variations influence topographic details. The reason for this somewhat paradoxical situation is not apparent. So it may possibly be in a part a result of the fact that geologists in general are not climate minded, and that geographers who are better acquainted with the details of climate in recent years have been more concerned with the adjustment of man's activities to varying landscapes than with the origin of the landscapes themselves. So, climate variation may affect the operation of geomorphic processes either directly or indirectly. The indirect influences are largely related to how climate affect the amount, kind, and distribution of vegetal cover. The direct controls are such obvious ones as the amount and kind of precipitation, its intensity, the relation between precipitation, evaporation, daily range of temperature, whether and how frequently the temperature falls below freezing, depth of frost penetration, and wind velocities and directions. So there are, however, other climatic factors whose effects are less obvious, such as how long the ground is frozen, exceptionally heavy rainfalls and their frequency, seasons of maximum rainfall, frequency of freezing, differences in climatic conditions as related to the slopes facing the sun and those not so exposed, the differences between conditions on the windward and leeward sides of topographic features transverse to the moisture bearing winds, and the rapid changes in climatic conditions with increase in altitude. So most of what we consider the basic concepts in geomorphology have evolved in human temperate regions. We have to a large degree considered such regions as representing the normal conditions. Although we have come to realize to some degree the differences between processes in arid and in humid regions, we are still too prone to think of only one kind of arid region, whereas there really are several types of arid climates, and thus we oversimplify when we speak of the arid cycle. As yet we have hardly begun formulation of the basic geomorphic concepts with respect to the humid tropical, arctic, subarctic regions. Of this much we may feel certain that the processes which are dominant in the humid middle latitudes are not necessarily important to the same degree in the lower and higher latitudes, and that their significant differences will not be fully comprehended until we take into full account climatic variations. High altitudes within any climatic realm impose modifications which should also be recognized. Concept 10. This is the last fundamental concept of geomorphology. It refers geomorphology, although concerned primarily with present day landscapes, attains its maximum usefulness by historical extension. So I repeat, geomorphology, although considered primarily with the present day landscapes, and attains the maximum usefulness by historical extensions. Geomorphology concerns itself primarily with the origin of the present landscapes, but in most landscapes there are present forms that date back to previous geologic epochs or periods. A geomorphologist is thus forced to adopt an historical approach if he is to interpret properly the geomorphic history of a region. Application of the principle of uniformitarianism makes this approach possible. We have already learned this principle of uniformitarianism by Hutton in our previous video on fundamental concept of geomorphology. At first thought, it might seem that the recognition of ancient erosion surface and the study of ancient topographies does not belong in the field of geomorphology. But the approach of the geomorphologist may well be the most logical one. And this aspect of landform study is called paleogeomorphology. So what is paleogeomorphology? When the recognition of ancient erosional surfaces the study of ancient topographies doesn't belong in the field of geomorphology, but the approach of geomorphologists may well be logical one. This aspect of landform, when we are studying it in historical extension, that is paleogeomorphology, it is becoming increasingly important. Nowadays, the historical nature of geomorphology was recognized by Bryan 1941. The historical nature of geomorphology was recognized by Sir Bryan 1941. If landforms were solely the result of processes now current, there would be no excuse for the separation of the study of landforms as a field of effort distinct from dynamic geology. The essential and critical difference is the recognition of landforms or remnants of landforms. Remnants, we know, the last product or the residue of landforms produced by processes no longer in action. Thus, in its essence and in its methodology, physiography, geomorphology is historical. Thereby, it is a part of historical geography or historical geology, although the approach is by a method quite different from the commonly used. When geomorphologists themselves fully realize and in turn convince other geologists of this use, which can be made of geomorphic principles and knowledge. So the study of the subject will become a true working tool in many of the practical applications of geology. So from this chapter, few MCQs are very important. First one is Principles of Uniformitarianism, Hutton, 1785, related by Playfair, who has given the Principle of Geology, 1802, and the very important phrase is, present is the key to the past, Hutton. While studying geomorphology, these things should be kept in mind. Okay. So next day we will be back with another important video lessons on geography. Till then, subscribe to the Studyopia, and if there is any doubt, you can reach us through the comment section down below. Thank you.